Hi, my name is Ioannis Kaloskampis, and I'm a senior data scientist at the Data Science Campus of the Office for National Statistics. Since leaving the EU, the UK has been implementing an ambitious program of free trade agreement negotiations. Understanding the effectiveness of these agreements is a priority for government organizations to provide valuable insights in developing new trade agreements and help businesses maximizing existing trade agreement benefits. Preferential utilization rates, or PURs, are a key metric of the effectiveness of free trade agreements. In this talk, I will present the work carried out at the Data Science Campus in collaboration with the Department for International Trade to understand how PURs vary across products, firms, and geographical regions, and draw insights regarding the factors which could influence the decision to utilize preferential tariffs. We are using UK transaction level information such as product type, transaction value, and expected savings, and firm characteristics, for example, size and turnover. And for analysis, we developed an advanced data science system which utilizes machine learning techniques such as random forests and gradient boosted trees. PURs measure the extent to which businesses make use of the zero or reduced tariffs available. And they can be defined as the proportional value of eligible transactions that used preferential rates. Now, the main incentive for the usage of preferential tariffs is the reduction in duties. However, there are costs associated with the usage of preferences, which could relate, for instance, to rules of origin and various procedures related to a shipment. Consequently, preferential tariffs may not be used unless the potential duty savings are high enough to overcome the procedural costs. A DIT policy priority is to better understand the utilization of preferential trade tariffs by businesses and the savings they make on customs duties. I mentioned that in this work we use UK transaction level data and firm characteristics to analyze how PURs vary. There has been previous analysis in this area by the National Board of Trade Sweden in 2019 with similar objectives, and their econometric model was the identification of the relationships between preference tariff utilization and potential duty savings, for which they used the logistic regression. In this work, we enhance the Swedish analysis, and here we're using longer time series, so we're using data from 2009 to 2019. So there was 1 month of data in the Swedish paper. We are also looking at countries of interest to DIT, whereas in the Swedish analysis there was only one country. And here we're applying data science techniques, which are powerful predictors for econometrics. For our analysis, we built a data set which combined enterprise level characteristics, transaction level imports data, and customs tariffs. We used transaction level data rather than aggregate, which gave us freedom to develop a better understanding of the behavior of the businesses. We explored the utilization of preferential tariffs by businesses between the UK and several countries of interest, and these tariffs were available during 2009 and 2019. Due to data availability, we only covered UK imports and not UK exports. So these are the databases that we have used. So that's HMRC trade in goods data for transaction level information, the interdepartmental business register for firm characteristics, and the market access maps, which gave us the tariffs. These are the key questions that we covered in our research. Does utilization vary by product? Do smaller companies underutilize preferential tariffs? How does utilization vary by UK region of import? And if we have high value imports, are they more likely to utilize preferential tariffs? So now I will present some results from our analysis, starting with descriptive statistics. And what we can see here is utilization by product type. So on the left side of the slide, we see overall utilization over the period 2009 to 2019. So we can see here that there are certain products, such as vegetable products, that show high utilization. And then there are products such as footwear and headgear that show low utilization for the entire period between 2009 and 2019. And on the right side of the slide, we can see utilization of the products over the years and how it changes. So you can see, for example, that for certain products such as transportation equipment, we have a very volatile use of preferential tariffs, and for other products such as textiles, these have a consistently low utilization of preferential tariffs. Next, we're looking at utilization by UK region, and overall, we see that there are some regions that show high utilization, such as Eastern England and South East England, and there are other areas that show low utilization, such as North East England and South West England. And if we look at what is happening over the years, we can see that there is a drop in utilization in the northeast part of England, and utilization in Wales seems to drop over the years, but we don't have abrupt fluctuation here. We're now looking at utilization by country of origin. So again, we can see here that certain countries stand out with low utilization, such as Botswana, Lesotho, Mexico, but also Canada. So in this case, we will try to understand what causes this underutilization. So it could be specific free trade agreements that they could influence this result, or it could be the preference margin or the administrative burden of rules of origin in these specific countries that cause this low utilization of preferential tariffs. So in terms of policy, it may be worth revisiting some of these agreements and change them so that there is a higher utilization in these specific countries. So now I will present the results of our predictive analysis. And first of all, I will explain how we build our model. And I have mentioned previously that we have pursued the machine learning approach. And obviously, there's always a big question, is machine learning the right approach? So in this case, it makes a lot of sense because we have what we call big complex data. So we have several millions of rows in our database and many variables. and we have categorical variables. And when we convert categorical variables to numericals, what happens is that we have even more variables. So since we have big data, it makes a lot of sense to use machine learning. And the question that we're trying to answer here is, why don't some transactions use preferential tariffs? So we are going to use a classification approach, and we are going to test several models, such as random forests, gradient boosted trees, and logistic regression. So for features, we're going to be using firm characteristics, such as firm size, turnover, and information about each specific transaction, such as the value of the transaction and the potential duty savings. And what we're trying to predict here is whether a transaction has utilized preference tariffs or not, which will help us understand the key drivers behind this decision. So our pipeline for the analysis looks like this. First of all, we have a feature engineering facility where we do some initial processing and we link the databases together. Then we identify variables that could be correlated. In this case, if you have correlated variables in your vector, this could negatively impact the accuracy of your model. And then we are looking at the problem of class imbalance. So in our case, we have two classes. One that represents transactions that have utilized preference tariffs, and another class that represents those transactions that haven't utilized preference tariffs. So for our data, one of the classes was significantly underrepresented. That was the class with the transactions that didn't use tariffs. In this case, there are several options depending on what model you're using. In any case, you have to boost the minority class one way or the other. So it could be done with weight adjustment, but it could also be done with adding synthetic data to complement the insufficient data of the minority class. Afterwards, we bring all these features together. We do what we say the vector assembly, and then we have to kind of like run normalization on those features that appear in different scales, because these are like completely different features. And having finished this step, we are ready to train the machine learning models, which will predict whether a transaction have utilized preference tariffs or not. I will now present the results of the predictive analysis of our model. And I would like to mention that these results were obtained using the gradient boosted trees classification algorithm, because it gave us the highest accuracy. So the purpose of our analysis is to determine how certain key factors affect the utilization of preference tariffs. And what we see here is probability plots. So on the left side of the slide, we see the effect of potential duty savings in the utilization of preferential tariffs. So we see that for duty savings of above £20, there is a linear relationship between potential duty savings and the probability of utilization. And the way to interpret it is that for example, for if you have like potential duty savings around 3,000, so we are around here, we expect that more than 8 out of 10 transaction would utilize preferential tariffs. And note here that we are using the logarithmic scale, which allows us to fit a wider range of values in the same plot. And now, on the right side of the slide, we see the effect of transaction value in the probability of utilization. So again, we see that for transaction values above £1,000, there is a linear relationship between the transaction value and the probability of utilization. Just note here that this diagram starts at doesn't start at 0, and that's because transactions with value less than £135 are exempt from duties. Here are some findings from our analysis so far. So when looking at factors that play a significant role to the underutilization of preferential tariffs, the most important of them is low value transactions, which result in low savings. So since there are administrative costs associated to the utilization of preferential tariffs, firms use them only when it is justified by the savings. We also see that when the value of import increases, then the probability of utilization of a preference tariff increases too. And this relationship is close to linear, and the same goes for potential duty savings, as we saw on the previous slide. Also, previous studies have found a relationship between the firm size and utilization of preferential tariffs, but we haven't found any evidence for this in our analysis. Also, when looking at descriptive statistics, we found that utilization of preference rates varies across different products and geographical region of importers, and some factors that could be at play are product-specific rules of origin, maybe proximity to ports, or certain industrial hubs. And finally, there is a clear evidence that some of the countries are underutilizing the preference tariffs, which could be related to rules of origin. I will finish the presentation with our next steps. So our priority now is to use our findings to inform policymakers. And we are hoping that this work will lead to targeted interventions which will improve the uptake of preferential tariffs. And we are also interested to see what is the effect of events such as EU exit, COVID-19 in our time series, and also what will be the impact of new free trade agreements. And if you're interested in this work, there is a blog coming up which will be published at the ONS Data Science Campus website, so stay tuned.